Our Around the World segment tonight. On the campaign trail, candidate Trump promised an America First foreign policy. Well, it's been almost a year since he took office, so let's take a look at his foreign policy achievements and how they stack up compared to his campaign promises. Take a look.
President Obama watches helplessly as North Korea increases its aggression and expands further and further with its nuclear reach. We have the leverage, we have the power over China, economic power, and people don't understand it. And with that economic power, we can rein in and we can get them to do what they have to do with North Korea, which is totally out of control. We have a massive trade deficit with China, a deficit that we have to find a way quickly, and I mean quickly, to balance. A strong and smart America is an America that will find a better friend in China, better than we have right now. Look at what China is doing in the South China Sea. They're not supposed to be doing it. No respect for this country or this president. He negotiated a disastrous deal with Iran, and then we watched them ignore its terms even before the ink was dry. Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon, cannot be allowed, remember that, cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. And under a Trump administration, will never, ever be allowed to have that nuclear weapon. We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem. ISIS will be gone if I'm elected president, and they'll be gone quickly. They will be gone very, very quickly. We're going to cancel the Paris Climate Agreement and stop. Unbelievable. And stop all payments of the United States tax dollars to UN global warming programs.
With me now, conservative commentator Tyler Grant. Tyler, good to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, Tyler, you wrote a very interesting article grading Trump's foreign policy. You gave him, overall, for the first year, you gave him a C+ and said that he's mostly staying on Obama's course here. Tyler, tell us why.
Well, I said he's a C+. I mean, he's a passing grade. Definitely there's room for improvement. I said that he's mostly staying Obama's course because, as you've seen, he's following Obama's plan with ISIS and Iraq and in Afghanistan. We're mostly staying the course with some of our diplomatic relations, and there is some room for improvement.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to play the devil's advocate here because I think a C+, it is a passing grade. It is average, but it's not great. North Korea, I think, brought your average down when you're looking at all the different areas that you graded him. You gave him an F on North Korea. My goodness, how come?
Well, I think if you look at what's happening right now, President Xi Jinping in China just called an emergency meeting to address the military, something that he hasn't done before. And partly that's due to Trump, his tweet the other day when he basically had a nuke measuring contest with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. And so when you see the talks that are going to happen on January 9th, I believe, between North Korea and South Korea, something that's hasn't happened, certainly in my lifetime, you're seeing a response from China that indicates that they're disconcerted by what's happening with the Trump administration and can't get a signal from the Trump administration on what we're planning on doing with North Korea. And when you have things from the Trump administration like that tweet, it's hard to get a gauge on what the president's going to do. And since, like you heard in the clip that you just ran, that we're never going to allow North Korea to have a nuclear weapon, we've been hearing that from several past presidents, and North Korea has tested a significant amount of nuclear weapons and missiles since Trump has been in office.
Right, and I actually wouldn't disagree if you said that if you gave an F to, Bush #1 and Clinton and Bush #2 and Obama. I mean, I think they all handled North Korea very poorly. That's actually why North Korea
and they all would get Fs too. Yeah.
Right, exactly. That's why North Korea arguably has a nuke right now. But I don't think that President Trump is responsible for that. I mean, he is the one that brought student Otto Warmbier home. The North Koreans had already injured him to the point of death. So, I mean, a tragedy, but certainly not Trump's fault here. He's condemned the launches. He's bulked up U.S. presence over there. I believe it's his strategy strategy to leave China guessing since they're not cooperating. Trump does pride himself on not revealing to our enemies what we're going to do here. I guess, in my opinion, that's a little harsh for how he's handling North Korea, because it seems to me that finally, after 2 decades, a president is handling North Korea a little bit differently, and it's about time we do that. Let me pivot to a couple topics. That's ISIS, Israel, and then I have to include my pet topic here, and that is Nikki Haley. What grades did you give them?
Well, Nikki Haley gets an A+, but if we're talking about her speech towards the UN, she is a surrogate for the Trump administration at the UN. I mean, a fantastic job. Past presidents have been saying this for a long time, but that's just been empty rhetoric on the campaign trail or from the Oval Office, and Trump actually followed through on that. It's something that we've said that we were going to do. The American people have said that they want it, and Trump is finally going to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which I think is the right thing to do. On your second point about ISIS, I think Trump, has done a fantastic job, and I actually would, from the time where I published the piece to now, I mean, Vice ran a really good article today talking about how Trump has removed a lot of the hindrances of the Obama administration put in place in the military, and has allowed them to go after ISIS in, new and unique ways. And if you see from that piece, Trump has actually put boots on the ground in kind of more of a spike way. And if you see the number of airstrikes, there's actually a massive spike under the Trump administration, which the left is chalking up to that Trump is this kind of warmongering president. I don't think that that's the case. I think that Trump is actually
I don't think that's a negative stereotype when you're talking about warmongering against radical Islamic terrorists who are trying to kill everyone except the people in their own caliphate here. I have one negative thing that I think I would criticize President Trump on for foreign policy, and that's Rex Tillerson. I would give him a D for the appointment of Rex Tillerson, because I don't think that Secretary of State Tillerson fulfills the promises that President Trump made on the campaign trail, most of which I agree with. I agree with you on ISIS. I agree with you on Israel, on North Korea. I don't agree with you on North Korea. I think he's done a good job. I think he's done a good job with Iran, certainly not keeping in line with Obama's course there, reversing the Iran deal here. China, I guess I would give a TBD, to be determined. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen there. You give him a C, though.
And I think it's just because, for 2 reasons. I mean, we have a really complicated relationship with China, and as we saw at the beginning of the Trump administration when he fielded the call from the Taiwanese president, a congratulatory call, obviously a lot of foreign policy experts and former diplomats, ambassadors said that this was a breach of State Department protocol, and that's true. And I sensed, very similar to kind of how the Jerusalem situation is, that was more of a recognition of Taiwan's relationship and their friendship that we've had. But he reversed course on that, restated his there is one China policy to China, and then said basically to surrogates that he was going to run anything and any communication to the Taiwanese through China, which I think is, it shows weakness from the American president, and certainly something that the Chinese know our relationship with the Taiwanese, and the posturing that they do to their people is something that it's sort of a diplomatic farce. And I think that doctrine points on that.
Right, and I can get on board with that. I can get on board with that. I'd still take a wait and see thing, because a wait and see position, just because we haven't seen exactly how Trump's going to respond on the South China Sea Islands, or on the trade war that he's promised, in a sense, or I guess fully on the pressure that he wants the Chinese to put on the North Koreans. Tyler, thanks so much for coming on the show. Feel free to come back anytime when you update this as President Trump updates his foreign policy, as we know he will. All right, our next tipping point is with Greg Roman. Liberals are pivoting away from their own silence on the Iran protests by claiming that Republicans are hypocrites for pretending to support the Iranian people, all the while refusing to let Iranians come to America per President Trump's travel ban. Why that argument is faulty next. Stick with us.